Hello guys, my name is Stephen from second year. Now I want to tell you about op-amp parameter. An op-amp parameter is an integrated circuit that can be amplified weak electrical signals. An amplifier, operational amplifier has two input and one output pin. It basically rules in two amplifiers, the output of the value voltage between two input pins, and it is op-amp parameter symbols. One is non-integrated terminal and the one is integrated terminal. And there are classified into more types: voltage gain, input impedance, output impedance, input offset voltage, input offset current, input bias current, bandwidth. It is an input voltage. When both inputs and grounded identically, the output must be zero, but practically op-amp parameter produces the small output of an. To neglect the voltage, some voltage is required to be applied to there. This is called input voltage. It is input offset voltage diagram. And this is input offset current. The algebraic difference between two current is invertically non-vertically terminals. It is known as input offset current. As the matching between two terminals increases, the difference between IB1 and IB2 becomes small. Type value is 7 for IC 200 mA max, and it is a input offset current diagrams. It is a gain bandwidth product diagram. Gain bandwidth product. The gain bandwidth product GB is bandwidth of the OP amplitude when the voltage gain is 1. Type value of sound for IC is 1 mHz. And input impedance. The basically way of specific the input impedance of an OP amplified difference the common mode. The differential input impedance is totally resistance between inverting and non-inverting inputs. Difference input impedance is measured by determine the change in bias current of a given changes different inputs. The common mode of input impedance is resistance input and ground, and it is measured by determine the change in bias current for a given chance is common mode input voltage and input voltage. Ideally the two input bias current and are equal. This difference is zero. It is an way of specify the input impedance of an op-amp and common mode. Difference input impedance is totally resistance between writing and the non-inverting inputs. Difference input impedance is measured by determine the change in bias current for a given change in different inputs. Common mode input impedance is the, and it is the diagram of an. It is input bias current. It is defined as the average of both input current, and it is calculated as IB is equal to IB1 by IB2 by 2. Ideally the current IB1 and IB2 must be 0, but practically some values of input current presents due to finite value of input resistors R1 due to the different in the characteristics of the transistor used in the input stage of the op-amp parameters to who input current is not equally in the input bias current should be small as possible and it is temperature dependable. It is the diagram of input bias current.